Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 300 nope, 538. Whoa, went back in time there. Went back in time. I'm Spencer. I'm joined by Abe Stein
Yo,
and Mason
back
Clark.
in time.
Hey, I'm excited to talk about the last year.
Dude, we're gonna be looking back in time. That's right. We're talking about looking back on 2024, which, by the way, is a weird year to me. It still feels like 2020 to me. So
I think that's just gonna be the rest of your life. I think that's gonna be the rest of everyone's life.
just because we lost a year, like it just
Well, just so much changed, It's just like it feels like it's the different time than from.
I feel like COVID saved my life and it ruined everyone else's. Like I was gonna go into debt grinding SCG events, most likely, or like maybe a break even, and then everyone else, and it was like, all that stuff went well. My life moved in a great direction, and everyone else is like, I lost 2 years in a K hole, and I'm like, okay, just a weird time.
I mean, it cost me my favorite job I've ever had. So
See what I'm saying? Like, saved me.
I mean, I just
or everyone else. I don't know what to say.
I just think everyone kind of has a feeling, no matter what, of like, man, this is way more like 2020 than it is like the continuous life I had thought of before that. That's just.
I guess.
All right.
It's a weird time.
Enough about the good old days. So this is going to be kind of an episode that we do about every year where we go look back on our goals for the year and what we accomplished and kind of talk about things that we learned. And I mean, there's not really like an order to this because it's kind of an open discussion. But Abe, do you remember your goals for 2024?
Yeah, so I actually went back and listened to our year ahead episode before this recording to make sure I could get them right. But it was to play to learn a bit more than I had been, and like really committing to that as a way of like reinforcing and making continued gains on like my deck building and like really just continuing to play, to explore formats more than trying to win in them in the short term. And I feel like I actually did a really good job of that. And I think I feel pretty great that like looking back at the year, right? Like I started by like, in February playing, and there were the RCs, of course, but playing Pro Tour Murders, Karlov Matter. And getting to work with Team Sanctival for that, which was a phenomenal experience in like almost exactly experiencing this process, getting to work with what I believe is currently the most innovative team of deck builders on like whatever you want to call the Pro Tour circuit. And like just approaching formats with more of a desire to understand what's going on and then start making decisions from there rather than practicing several decks and going in feeling prepared with each of them. Kind of being able to stay a little bit like zoomed out to then understand, what's going on in the format and then zoom in. Now, I think there's still a lot of opportunity for me in that. I know that like I've been thinking about RC DC for quite a bit. I think it was one of the most exciting Magic tournaments to prepare for in honestly, the last like four years. But also I think is one where I learned the most about and was reminded a lot about some of my own areas I can improve in better as a player, and some of my own like tendencies to like fall in my own pitfalls, and just like taking that as an example to like, okay, this process can work. I think I just need to remind myself who I am and what that means. So like for example, specifically, Mason and I worked a lot with Niall as well on 5-color enigmatic. And I think our deck was really good and really cool. I think that it was really strong in a lot of ways that I wanted the deck to be. It accomplished everything I wanted my deck to, but I think that looking back at the metagame that came through, like the other decks I had access to in terms of what people around me were working on were you know, I could have gone stock and defaulted to the mice deck, or I could have gone with what a lot of my testing group landed on, which was demons, which filled what I had already acknowledged was a vacuum in the format uh, left by vampires, the previous best deck, and an archetype and a strategy that was not really addressed by anything in the metagame. Which I think for that tournament, had I really had all the time in the world to think about it, or was not, you know, kind of trying to make this idea and poured a lot of work into continue to work, which I think it did. I could have come up with a better deck for that tournament by way of saying, okay, yes, do I think that the enigmatic deck is really good? Yes. Do I think that, you know, at a high level in the format, it's doing everything I want it to? Yes. Do I think that, you know, if decks like demons start doing well, that I'm well positioned? Yes. But is that, you know, was I overthinking it? Was I too many steps ahead of where the metagame would be at that time? Is something that kind of taking it into 2025.
I actually don't think
is what I'm thinking about.
I actually don't think you played 3 steps ahead in that deck.
I didn't play 3 steps ahead in that deck. It's true, but I definitely felt like I was a bit far from there, and
How do you?
and I think that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think the fact that I got to even where I was and was looking at the options I was doing, which were, I think, 2 fantastic options for the RC, like, is a product of this process that I've adopted and built over the last 2 years, and I've been working on more. But I think there's just a lot of room to continue that in 2025.
Do you think there was a hole in your process that made that happen, or do you think that it was just like kind of tunnel vision?
I think it was me. I think, like, well, not just me. I don't regret the decisions I made. I think that I could have made a better decision given the way things played out if I had the perfect information. But I think that, like, I know that I'm someone who really can get invested in something and wants it to work and will put a lot of work into something. And then, like, sometimes in the past and still to the present, I think all of us sometimes don't kind of sanity check or update your priors of, like, okay, is this still the best thing to do? And I know that Mason and I worked on this deck together. And it really is just one example of kind of this process of play for me. But I think just reminding myself that, like, hey, you can do a lot of great work and you can put together a really cool and functional and, like, strong deck that plays all the cards you want to play. And that still might not be the best thing for that room, even if it's a great deck and is worth playing. And I think that, like, me, the player, kind of in that seat making the decision, didn't think about, right, when I was looking at the decks I wanted to play and kind of committing, I was like, I didn't think about the opportunity for demons to be an unknown quantity and to not be this mid-range deck that was respected, and thought more about how my enigmatic deck would probably stack up well against that if that was a breakout deck. But I didn't realize that perhaps my team was that kind of sweet spot one step ahead and had the deck that was just on the cusp of what everyone else was playing to be better positioned. And maybe, you know, give it 2 or 3 weeks, and enigmatic, as it got even more streamlined, continued to be one of the best decks in the format. But by playing, like, everything I did up to that, of, like, playing a lot of different decks in the format, identifying what the options were, knowing kind of what the problems I needed to solve for were, and then working on those into that deck list. I think that enigmatic deck that we put together was a product of that process, and I think the only reason it was as good as it was and able to handle all the things it was because of following that process from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I think that while on a tournament level, for that exact tournament, might not have been the best thing, but the numbers show that, like, demons was the best deck, like, win rate wise. That doesn't mean the process fell through. I think the process worked really well. I think it's a matter of just, how do I make that process work, and then, you know, not get so focused on what is this deck going to look like when I'm playing it, and getting so invested in that, and focusing again on, like, what's going to maximize my win rate? What is it I'm going to do? Like, you know, sure, I can do all this, but is that still the best way to proceed? And letting that process work with myself making a better decision at the end point.
I also think there's like, I would almost argue the biggest thing that stopped us from playing demons was the PR, which is more like, I remember very clearly we finished recording and Abe says, I get back from hanging out with my girlfriend for her birthday, and all my friends are saying demons. And I didn't even get told what the demons deck looked like. You know what I mean? Like I'm just hearing this demons joke, and he's like, and Abe tells me like it looks like it's good or whatever, but they keep saying demons, which is like I love it. We joke about it here on the podcast. I think it's hilarious, honestly. And I think we're in a moment where we have so little time. Like we're all working so much. And so I hear about this demons deck, and it's like, okay, whatever. Like it sounds like it's doing similar stuff to me. And I understand what my deck's like. I know what I'm solving for. This doesn't seem like it's jumping out to Abe. Move on. Where maybe if the deck was presented to me as, or was presented to us even as like, here is like this evolution of Rakdos, right? And like the next successor to that, I don't know if it would have switched off it, but I think its PR and branding would have been better, right? And so at least for me personally, I think I should have explored that more. I also think like, while the data definitely bears out that Demons is better, so Niall and Abe didn't do great. I dropped live for the Pro Tour because I thought I wasn't live because of the size, right? To get home because I had like a very important meeting the next day. So there's sometimes too where it's like, I almost wonder how history goes if, let's say, I rattle off 2 and lose winning for the Pro Tour. Like, I don't even make it. Like, how do we feel about the deck then, right? Because I feel like we did solve a lot of things. Did we figure out the absolute best deck in the metagame? Not all. I feel like our deck was great. And if you made me had to run it back, like the moment I was getting my card to leave, I definitely would have rather run it back than play a random deck. If I could play Phoenix Talent, I would have done that instead of anything we did.
Sure.
You know? And like that's one of my big takeaways from this year was like, I've learned there are no sacred cows. I had 1 talent in my deck, and it never occurred to me, why not just play more talents? You know, like, and had I just ever been like, well, I don't have any flex slots, I've used them all, and just been like, actually, you know what? I don't need the Ledger Shredder. I need to draw my whole deck. Then I could have had the Phoenix deck because I had Phoenix with a talent. I just didn't have Phoenix with 4 talents, and I boxed myself in. So not to take your time there, Abe.
No, and I definitely want to say, I think that deck that we built was a marvelous construction. Like I think we built something really impressive and very difficult to construct. Like the mana worked, we got all the spells in, and I was really happy with it. And I felt it was a good deck for the room. You know, mine and Niall's results. And RCs are big tournaments that are hard to do well, and there's a lot of variance in Magic. Like I played some real nail biter games that I navigated wrong. Like I had turns where there was a point where I didn't draw like 2 cards with a Beanstalk because I didn't realize I'd have the mana until midway through the turn, and that cost me against Green White Company in a match where I thought I was going to win. Like those things do add up, and I think that our deck was good. I just think when Spencer, when you asked the question about process, I think the fact we could build that deck is a product of that process of looking at what are the parameters, right? What are the rules of engagement of the format, and then what are the parameters? How are we executing to making sure we're doing well within those.
You kind of started this by saying that your goal was like to play, to learn, and to approach the format kind of in a different way. And I think that, or formats, I should say. I think that, just the fact that this conversation went the way that it did means that you did achieve that goal, right? Like just from the nature of what we're talking about, it means that what you were doing, you succeeded at.
Yeah, it was a good year in Magic for me. Getting to play a Pro Tour and string across RC qualifications and getting to keep on doing it. That's always a W. That's me.
For me, like last year was like a lost year in Magic for me due to like just getting laid off 3 times in under 12 months. And then this year, like I really tried to focus on my job during parts of the year but I believe my goal was, if I remember correctly, to play more matches of Magic that I cared about. I would say that in a lot of ways I did achieve that. Like, I think my little team trio cashed like every single team trio event this year, and like we all really had fun and like cared about those. But I think that where I kind of failed is I took an entire Modern season off, which is what it is. but also like I really wanted to play more challenges this year than I did. I think I only like played 2 challenges this year, and that's just like way less than I was anticipating playing. And something that I think will. I don't like to set a goal to like play specific events because with my chronic nausea, there are just times where that's just not going to work out. But I think that in the goal of playing more matches that I cared about, I just think that I should have been in the streaks a little bit more on Magic Online, and maybe not taken an entire season of Modern off. Even though I didn't like Modern and it didn't end up mattering because of the deferral, I still think that I should have changed things up a little bit. And to be fair, I a little bit behind the scenes. We're recording this on the 16th because we're recording our end of year episodes and stuff a little early so that we can take the holidays off. And I just won an RCQ this last weekend, and I was finding myself getting back into the groove of things again already, even through taking that time off. But I think I could have done better on my goal.
Yeah, I don't remember my goal that I had set. So I was a little curious, and I honestly, I meant to watch the episode and just forgot. So I guess, really quickly, Abe, do you remember what I said? I know you went back to listen. Maybe you just listened to your own part.
I don't remember. I would have to.
You're good. So I feel like my goal coming into this year was to play more and specifically try to stay sharp / improve, because so much of the previous year, that being 2023, was setting up the coaching to getting it sustaining, getting going, right? And then all that sort of stuff. And near the end of 2023, I was playing a lot more of the Apex events and all that sort of stuff. And so at least that feels like what my goal was. And if I look back on the last year with that goal in mind, there are some hits and there's some misses. I mean, part of what happened is I commentated half the RCs. So I needed to stay sharp. I didn't need to be as sharp because the events I would have been incentivized to play, which are only really 4 of in a year, could really go hard, I didn't get to play, right? So, and with one of them coming up here in Atlanta with the spotlight, kind of at the beginning of next year, but really feels like this year, right? I haven't had too many moments besides DC, but I do look back on DC fondly. I do feel like there was some good work, and we've covered this ad nauseum in this episode. I don't want to rehash that. So, but ultimately had a good deck for the weekend, didn't have the best deck, and that's something that I'm okay with because I was trying to do well on the weekend. And I feel pretty good about stuff, but I definitely could have put more effort in. I feel like my relationship with Magic as a whole has the best it's ever been. I feel like my life is sort of the best it's ever been. And the only real downer to the year was sort of the release of MH3 and Nadu kind of ruining things compounded with the One Ring. And yeah, that was supposed to, in my mind, be this really high moment, and was honestly just very depressing. So besides that,
hey man, you gotta you gotta live your dream and design Magic cards.
Yeah,
I don't know,
yeah, but I got
that's
to
gotta be
dream.
the best part of your year in some ways.
No, it's kind of the worst, honestly, because all my friends hated it. They talked about not liking it. They didn't engage. My favorite format died. A lot of things that I said would be problems were problems, and a lot of things I couldn't have stopped were, these things were shipped up in the last minute. Compound that with the One Ring, and it was just
Fair.
This thing that was supposed to be this highest high turned into a thing where people wouldn't talk to me about it because they didn't like it. And so instead of saying something mean, they would not say anything at all. And they would avoid it. And so it was honestly very depressing. And so it sucked. I mean, it's okay. I mean, the working on that part was great, and doing game design is something I love. But this supposed to be this release and the celebration was really panned, and the build up to it was good. The hype was there. And there was, some worries I had about Amp-Raptor. There were some worries I had about this Nadu card, about I haven't played with it. Who knows? Everything everyone's saying is pretty good. Hopefully they're wrong. And in reality, that wasn't the case. And yeah, I just, my favorite game, my favorite format, there was a chance outside of my control that it died around the time the set I worked on. And luckily, today, I mentioned it in the podcast episode with Abe that listeners would have heard last week at this point. I feel like it really got saved in a lot of ways, and they took the radical steps it needed to, I think, make it a format again that people really love and are excited at, and only time will tell. But yeah, I mean, like, this year has been overall a very amazing year with this like kind of one weird dip moment. And that's, that's life sometimes. It's ups and downs. It happens. So
You guys have anything that you learned that you want to talk about this year? Like big learning moments? Abe?
I think, well, I mean, there's a lot I learned this year. I think that, like, between working with Team Sanctival and especially seeing, like, Jason on the precipice of its incredible run in the Pro Tours this year, and just, like, seeing the amount of effort and attention to detail and process there, it's something I almost can't describe, and I'm glad that it and CFT Sock are streaming Joint Exploration now, because I feel like you get to see more window into that process. That's really, really good. And I don't know, I think I learned a lot and saw a lot of these kind of, like, areas that I can always focus on and improve on and keep, like, aware of. I think I talked about it a few, I think I talked about, like, right after Worlds, where I realized that I, like, needed to reevaluate kind of and acknowledge that I still had a tendency to play a little bit more conservatively rather than more aggressively when I was able to, and that there's kind of balance that I can strike better in my play. And likewise in, like, my deck building, I can be a little more studious and a little more diligent. In my my deck building, I can do a lot more of this, and in deck selection I can too. So yeah, a lot of just, like, really self exploration of, like, okay, these are things that I'm now aware of. Let me now put together the building blocks of, like, Magic that I've understood better now in the last year, and start to work, like, looking ahead to next year, start working with them more in conjunction. Not to bury the lead to next week's episode, but yeah, I mean, there's a ton that I learned this year just from being around those players and having experiences I've had. And also, watching Magic go through the cycles. I mean, I think, Mason, in what you just said about MH3, it kind of points to a real thing about Magic as a living game, is that there are years where it is, like, more of a slog to play than others. And I think that, kind of between the lines, I definitely learned a lot about how I prioritize Magic in my life currently, and how I, am choosing to engage intentionally about it, and how much my process is a product of my ability to find the fun in it, even when there are times where, like, Nadu and the One Ring and Bowmasters and, all this stuff is running around making the format terrible. Who wants to play that? It's like, no, like, what is there still to learn and know about the format, and whether or not it's the most fun you want to play for 500 matches or 5 matches before you're kind of tired of it. What do you do? So
I think that's honestly my biggest learning this year is, like, is learning how to learn again, and learning how to learn in times where maybe I'm not having the most fun, or, like, I'm, like, things aren't going exactly how I want them to go, or, like, my favorite decks aren't playable. Just finding, learning how to appreciate the kind of that learning process again. I don't know that I don't know where I forgot how to do that, but I feel like this year specifically gave me opportunities to kind of relearn that, and that kind of find the fun in it in a lot of ways. Like, kind of like you said, Abe, that finding the fun in that moment rather than the fun in the format or in the deck or in whatever, it's huge. It really helps.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only way you're going to get yourself to work the extra, 20, 30 hours on top of whatever else you do, is if you're enjoying it. And that's, I think, the most important thing. And also, you're going to, at least for me, I felt like I learned the most, and grew the most this year in a lot of places where all I was doing was just playing the matches I want to. I spent a lot of time preparing for like RCs and RCQs, just like, you know, in hangs again, in Discord calls, and just, you know, screen sharing like 5 different screens, people cube drafting, people playing, and just talking and jamming and finding ways to make, even if it was we're playing, you know, our 100th match of Pioneer of the week as a collective, like, and playing the same matchup for the 6th time, or sitting down and actually focus testing out, like, you know, the same matchup for the 10th time and like the 3rd day in a row of us actually getting together to do it. You know, finding ways to make that part of the joy rather than part of the grind, that really changed a lot. So good year.
Mason, do you have any major learning moments?
Yeah, I think I learned like a lot when it comes to like game design stuff this year, in particular. But the biggest takeaway I think from those that might be like helpful for listeners is when it comes to like trying to improve at something and you put a lot of time and effort into it, you are probably having more gains than you realize. And you are most like, assuming you're like, you know, actively trying to do this, whatever, even though you might not show in a way that manifests like immediately, or in like very visual ways, you are probably improving, and you will end up in a spot where you're going to be much better off, and you're going to succeed in a spot where you would not have 2-3 years ago. And understanding that, like, even though I'm not maybe, let's say, winning the RCQ the way I'd want to, but having those gains and becoming a lot better, you will then succeed when the moment comes. You know what I mean? Like, you'll have that much better chance to have it work out. And so I think, you know, maybe when someone's listening this year and they're thinking about their goals, and maybe their goal was to top 8 and at least one RCQ every season, and they only did it for half of them. Well, you know, if you have been working hard and putting in effort that sort of way, I bet you probably put yourself in a better position than you did a year ago at those sort of things. And so maybe next year you're going to top 8, you know, a bunch of them will qualify for all the RCs, right? Magic can be very fickle. Life can be very fickle. So
I actually think about this this year. I actually think about that this happened to me this year, where I don't know if you remember, Mason, like when I did those streams, I think I've talked about it on the podcast a couple times, where I did those streams like learning the red decks, just like forcing myself to do it. And I think that was like 2019. And now I'm very comfortable playing all types of aggro decks, right? And turns out Slick Show Off comes out, right? And like I just happen to fall in love with the card, and like I'm able to play a deck that I would never have played 5 years ago because I put in those gains that Mason's talking about, and then it pays off this much later. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's crazy.
Fundies.
Yeah, for real. All right, that is going to do it for the main topic. That's a look back at this year for us. We'll, you know, I honestly, it was a good year. I think despite everything that, you know, we could complain about in Magic, it was a good year for Magic. You know, the Foundations release was amazing, in my opinion. Like, just like Standard is back, guys. Like, Standard's back. Who would have thought? And like, you know, I think that really cool innovations happened. We had amazing guests on the podcast. It was cool.
Yeah, I definitely feel like 2024 was a lot of transitioning from the good things of 2023 to setting up for the good things of 2025. And I'm hoping that in 2025 we can, especially with like the BNR today, I mean, BNR on the 16th that we put an episode out about last week for the Time Travelers. But yeah, with that, and with just the trajectory of things and where they're going, the energy around Standard, the engagement that I see from the community to want to play, I feel like 2024 has really set us up good for 2025, and I'm hoping that it is. I'm excited to look into it too.
If you want to support the show, you can head over to patreon.com/ccmtg, become a patron of the show. If you're a patron of $5 or more, like Big Dex, you can ask a question like, what's been your best cube experience to date? Mason?
My best cube experience. Probably the Changeling cube, where every creature has every creature type, and it is a very unique one because obviously once you errata every card to be every card type and you build a cube with that in mind, you get to sort of have these insane moments that you normally just could never have happen, right? So like my Lord of Atlantis is now synergizing with my Goblin in a way that no one, I mean, that's a bad example, but like there are things like my Priestess Titania is synergizing with this Merfolk, and now my Regery is untapping my Priestess Titania, and now I'm making all the, like there's a lot of cool stuff in that cube. So that would be my, yeah, so there's a lot of really cool cubes. I want to try a bunch of them, like the All Ornithopter one or whatever. So,
yeah, my favorite cube experience, I was at SCG Vegas. It was after the Legacy Open, and my friend, actually SCG Vegas, I believe winner, Zach Mesa, he had what was a proxy split cube where every card is 2 cards. So like one half of it's Primeval Titan, the other half's Farseek. And like this whole huge cube like that was so fun. Like that was a blast.
I'm going to take this question in a different direction because I've played a lot of cube in my life, going like back to, I don't know, really early on in my Magic career. And I'm just going to say for this year, my favorite cube experience, especially with the feeder leagues and everything, was sitting down and breaking open the like GAC archetype and understanding how to leverage like really getting into the nitty-gritty of how do I make this cube in the meta of how people are drafting. How can I, myself and also my friends who are qualifying for the 64-mans, put them in position to have more tools in their back pocket, and along the way kind of develop this pick order and draft this deck that was extremely underdrafted compared to how strong it could be, and understand like an entirely like an archetype that was put into the cube is kind of like, here are powerful things that are on par. You know, it's Hogak, stuff that people don't really are not gravitating to because it's not traditional Magic, and finding inroads to making that a deck that works. That was really rewarding, and I found that to be an extremely, especially in line with my goals for 2024. Like I was playing cube in a way I'd never played cube before, and it was just awesome. Like that was my favorite thing.
That's dope. Thank you so much for the question, Big Ducks. If you want to support the show, head on over to our sponsor, Untap.gg. They are the #1 arena deck tracker. They have some awesome features. You don't even have to sign up for the premium for us to get a little bit of a kickback, and it is greatly appreciated. You can also check out the swag store in the show notes or on YouTube. And yeah, always improving is the point of the show. Every week we want to talk about what we've done to improve and get better. And we didn't talk about this before the show, but like, are you guys just skipping this week's because you guys just did it, 2 hours ago?
Someone didn't listen to the episode.
When was I supposed to listen to the episode?
It's been 5 hours, baby. 40-minute episode. Could have fit it in. That's all I'm saying.
What did you guys say on the episode?
It's a band reaction episode, baby. We didn't do no always improving.
Oh, nice. All right.
Honestly, I didn't know we were doing one for this one. But I guess
we don't.
I thought in December it was hanging out December.
No, I'll do one just because I have one. This last weekend, but by the time of the recording, a couple weeks ago, I played Temur Terror at an RCQ, and I had a lot of learning moments. But the kind of this improving moment was I found that I play a lot cleaner in paper right now under pressure, where I can hyper focus, and my always improving moment is kind of maybe a goal almost of like finding ways to give myself that pressure more often, like finding ways where I can duplicate or reproduce that moment, because I think if I can do that, my playing goals will be a lot easier to achieve.
Someone's gotta get in the blue lock zone. They gotta gotta lock in. No, I mean that's definitely like a big thing, and I think I don't know, like I think that if you're feeling that way, I think it might even be worth just thinking about what makes it so those matches make you feel pressure, and then like for me, I think that when I started to in reverse, I started to decouple like my win-in pressure from every other match and be like I would play really badly under pressure and then I'd flub and make mistakes is rather than that saying like, okay, round one, if I like for me to make top 8, I need to win like in the 6-round tournament, I need to win, 4 of the first 5. So this one matters. Like this one matters as much as round 7. As much as the finals, round 1 matters, right? And like just getting it all level. So I don't know, hopefully that's helpful to you.
No, it's good.
Yeah. My always improved moment, if I can jump on in, save Mason for a second because he wasn't expecting it. But no, my always improving this moment this week actually just comes from outside of Magic, but I just finished, as viewers may notice, I'm in a new space. I just finished moving, like really for the first time, like moving out on my own and kind of being in my own environment and getting all that set up for myself. And just finding there's so many things I could list of like things that even just last like 3 or 4 days of actually fully being in the new space. I could list as like new experiences where I'm learning, but really just holding with me that thought of that all these new experiences I'm having and all this change I'm experiencing is a catalyst for improving. I think is something that old versions of myself would not have done with as much grace or as much like of a positive attitude as I'm able to approach with now. And that's been really awesome. Like when I think about capping off 2024 with making this big kind of change to my life as it's looked for the last, quite a while. This one is one where just in general being in it and doing it and like keeping that always improving mindset towards the things that I'm doing has been just a big level up, and so it's really awesome to experience and feel. So, Mason, now that I've said that, you've got to have a great one.
Sure. Yeah, I would say my always improving moment comes from this weekend with NRG Champs, where I'm not sure how clear it was to the people watching how many like technical difficulties we were having on the back end, and sort of just like it's very frustrating, and I mean I argue it's extremely frustrating. And it's just tough when it's something you care about a lot and you want to put on a good product and you want to put on a good show and really build up these players, and you're sort of from behind the scenes like taking 1 step forward, 3 steps back every little bit of time. It feels like at least that's how it feels, right? And just sort of not letting that get to me in the very same way that it was Magic, and just applying that sort of same mentality, I think helped it shine through in a way from people I talked to. Besides when the stream actually crashed, one time it seemed like people didn't really realize what was happening, which is good. And is relieving, but also I think is really like a good takeaway moment long term. Like sometimes things for you are going to feel this way, but if you lock and keep your head down, it's probably not as bad as you think it is, and just do the best you can, take it in stride. So
I love that one. That is going to do it. If you enjoy the channel conversation, you can head over to the Patreon Discord to become a patron of $5 or more. You can join the public Discord where people are talking about bands today. That is in the show notes. And then, the YouTube comments. We got some really good comments on our episode with CCR. Very kind words. People really loved that episode. It was really fun to do. So, and then you can follow us on social media at CCMPG. Mason, where can people find you?
You can find me on twitch.tv/TheMasonClark. You can find me over on Twitter and Blue Skies, Mason E. Clark. You can reach out to coaching via either of those social media platforms or my email, masoneclark@gmail.com. Put coaching in the description. And some more coveragey stuff in the future with NRG, etc. So I'm excited to do that. Abe, where can people find you?
People can find me over at Blue Sky at More Nothings, and you can DM me there for coaching, or you can shoot me an email over at morenothings@gmail.com. I'm hoping to take on a couple more people in the start of next year, especially as I'm not really planning on going to any Spotlight series in the first half of the year, but I will be likely helping my friends who are play and getting prepared for those formats and for the RCQs. So. And the RCs. So I'll be pretty engaged and looking to help people out.
You can find me at Spencer13H on Blue Sky and on Threads. You can find me every week on the Need to Nerd podcast, where we talk about nerd culture. Thank you, everybody, so much, and we'll see y'all next week with a brand new episode of Constructed Criticism.